Should you buy one expensive property in London or 3 properties up north? This video is going to explain how much cash you need to buy the average 1-bed flat in London, and we compare that with buying 3 cheaper properties in the north of England to see which approach is going to put more money in your pocket each month and which approach is going to build wealth the most over 10 years. If you want bragging rights, maybe just go and buy 100 properties up north.
I asked you how many properties you've got and you didn't know.
I told you
about 100. You didn't
no,
say
over 100.
Yeah.
So London is known for being one of the best property markets to invest in the world. But with that comes a hefty price tag. A lot of property investors don't even bother looking up north because they believe there's simply no capital growth there. So let's fact check that. We can see that the average property price in London for a flat has grown over the last 10 years, 61%. Compared to terraced houses in the north of England, over the same period of time, have grown 72%. And I'm thinking, hang on a second. So I decided to check the East Midlands to see how that's performed over the same period of time. And guess what the East Midlands has done? It's done 84% growth over the same period of time. So I thought, hang on, let's go and check the Yorkshire and Humberside area, and that came back at 63% growth over the last 10 years. So is it fair to say then that you can get more capital growth in the south than you can in the north anymore? Because looking at these simple stats that I've just done on randomly selecting a few northern regions compared with London, all of them beat London in the last 10 years. We're not talking about over the last 2 years where we've seen massive amounts of growth. We're talking a 10-year period, 2012 to 2022. So I don't believe you can claim anymore that the south grows more in capital appreciation than the north, because it's simply not true. But let's get into the detail and check out an actual property and compare that to some properties in the north to see, maybe in the detail somewhere when we're picking a specific one, that there is a way that we can make more money in London compared to properties up north. Because otherwise, why are we buying in London at all? So the biggest driver as an investor is yield, because at the end of the day, you cannot eat capital growth. We need cash flow each month coming into our pocket to be able to keep building our property portfolio and generate another income stream. So eventually you can quit your day job, just like I did. I used to work as an IT project manager, quit that, best day of my life, and have never looked back, and now I'm a full-time property investor. So I picked this area in London. It's an affluent area where a lot of people want to live. It's Fulham, SW6. The price of this property is £370,000 for a 1-bed flat, which I think is a pretty good price as an entry point to get into London. You're going to need to be able to put down a deposit of 92.5 grand for it. The stamp duty is going to be £17,100. We'll say that there's legals of about 1,000, and then we've got other costs, which could be for searches and things like that, of around £500. So all up, we'd be putting down out of our pocket £111,100. So this one, we can see that it probably rent for around £1,900 per month. We get a mortgage on this one at 3.89%, which would mean that we would have to be paying £917.62 per month. This particular one is a leasehold property, but there's no service charge and no ground rent to be paid. The ground rent's a peppercorn, which essentially is zero money out of pocket. So we're going to say that insurance, maintenance, repairs are 10% of the rent that we take. So that would make it £190 per month. We need a property manager to look after it for us at 15%, which is going to be £285. And we're going to say that there's a vacancy rate of 5%, which will mean that it's £95. So all up, we've got a total of £1,488 to pay, which gives us a £412 per month cash flow. So for £111,000 down, we're getting £412 per month back, which gives us a 4.45% cash on cash return. So then I had a look to find some cheap properties up north, and I just picked based on yield. I had a look on property data, and I was looking at the postcode lookup area, and I just decided to pick NG7 because the price point for a 3-bed property there was quite high, and if I could get them at a good price, even refurbish them, could generate some money through capital growth maybe there, and also rent them at a good amount. So I found this particular property in NG7. It's advertised for £130,000, and it would mean that we'd have to put down a £32,500 deposit. We'd have stamp duty, land tax of £3,900. We'd have a solicitor legal fees of around £500, and we'd have other costs of about £100, which means all up we'd need £37k down. And so this way, if we bought 3 properties like this, that would be the same amount of money, our £111,000 down, our cash out of our own pocket. So then I had a look to see what other comparable properties are renting for in the area, and I found this property just down the street that's renting for £900 per calendar month. It's in a better condition, but anyway, we'll just use this as a number because maybe you'll refurbish this property and make it look like this one. So again, we can get the same mortgage at 3.89%, but based on the amount of mortgage, that's going to cost us £322.45 per calendar month. This is a freehold property, so there's no problems about worrying about lease extensions or lease costs or any of those additional costs that you get with leasehold properties. So then we've got insurance, maintenance and repairs, and again I use 10% on our rental income, so that would be £90 per calendar month. We're also going to use a property manager to manage this property and all the other properties, and that would be 15% of that £900, which is going to be £135. We've also got a vacancy rate of 5%, which is going to be £45, and then all up together, that's for our expenses is going to be £593. We take that away from our £900 per calendar month, which gives us a £307 per month in cash flow. And that cash flow is giving us a 9.97% cash on cash return for that one particular property. If we were able to then buy 3 similar types of properties for a similar amount of return, £300 per calendar month, we'd be generating £921 per calendar month for those 3 cheaper properties up north with the same cash outlay, £111,000, which is what we had to buy the 1 bed in London versus buying these 3 properties in Nottingham. And amazingly, if you were just to look at this one property in Nottingham, the cash flow is £307 per calendar month. The one in London was £421. There's not a massive difference, but we're only putting down out of our pocket 37 grand for the Nottingham one, whereas the London one was going to cost us out of our pocket £111,000. So how many of these properties would you need to become financially free? Let me know in the comments in the description below to see what that number is, because this is quite an interesting fact and a thing that I think would motivate a lot of people, inspire a lot of people, that with small amounts of money you can build a real good property portfolio up north. And kind of, why would you bother buying in London? But hang on, let's check for a second about capital growth. We did say earlier that it doesn't look like there's capital growth in London, but let's specifically go and look at Fulham as a council district, because that's a nice affluent area. Surely prices there have been growing up massively in the last 10 years. So first, let's start in Nottingham. We can see that a terrace property as an average costed around £85,000. And over the next 10 years, that has grown to £168,000, which gives us an £83,000 growth, capital growth figure, which means that our return over that period of time is at 98% growth. Essentially, it's doubled in value over that 10-year period in Nottingham. So let's have a look at SW6 in Fulham. We can only look in land registry at Fulham and Hammersmith council areas. So let's have a look at the average prices. For a flat there, it was £532,000 10 years ago. 10 years now, it's grown to £616,000. That's just an £84,000 growth over that 10 years. And amazingly, it's only £1,000 more than the Nottingham one has grown. Nottingham's grown 83,000, London's grown 84,000 in Fulham. And you're thinking, hang on, I could have bought a property in the north for a lot less money out of pocket and had that same amount of growth compared to having to put 530 grand down in a Fulham property to get that small amount of capital growth as a percentage in London. So that equates to just a 16% capital growth in Fulham and Hammersmith over the last 10 years, compared to nearly 100% capital growth in Nottingham over the last 10 years. So the past doesn't mean that that's going to happen in the future, but it's always a good indicator of what's likely to happen. But the benefits just don't stop there from buying up north and having more properties, because the more properties you own is actually hedging against vacancy rate, because you've got 3 properties, one of them becomes vacant, your cash flow isn't stopping. You've still got cash flow from the other 2, whereas in London, you've got that property, it becomes vacant, whap, you've got no cash flow coming in. You're having to service everything yourself out of your pocket again. So maybe there's some headaches of owning multiple properties. And this is what I've experienced. The biggest headaches are that you've probably got more issues with maintenance and repairs because you're trying to manage multiple properties. But if you've got a managing agent looking after everything, then they take on all of that headache for you, but you've still got approval process. They'll ask you for approvals on certain repairs because they cost more than maybe you've given them as the limit for not bothering you. Just spend up to £300 on whatever repair without consulting me, that's fine. So there's going to be more overhead from that point of view, a bit more aggravation, and you know, the more properties you got, there's more roofs to fix and those types of things. So over the longer period of time, those things are going to come up. So potentially more aggravation dealing with more than one property manager depending on where you buy. But strategically, if you buy in the same kind of area and just copying something that worked well, your initial blueprint, then that would be a good strategy to keep going with and buying in that area because you know one works. Why would you keep buying all over the UK and having to have a different property manager there, different property manager there? You might have then 10 different touch points when you could just have one touch point with one property manager that looks after your entire portfolio. So maybe this has been a massive eye-opener for you, as it has been for me, because I, like you, probably, especially for those people of you that live in the south, just think that there's little to no capital growth up in the north, unless you've already owned properties yourself up the north. You've bought that first 1 or 2, and you've actually then would have seen that there's been capital growth because you start to monitor the markets a bit more where you buy, and obviously your own property. But if you've not bought yet and you're thinking, should I buy in London or in the south, or should I buy in the north, this may really make you think a bit more about buying in the north. Not that I'm advocating for everyone to suddenly flock to the north and buy there, but the reality is it's actually probably going to make you more in cash flow and also grow more in capital appreciation over the next 10 years. So go and test this out for yourself. Go and do the same research that I've done. It's quite easy to do. I've shown you exactly what I did to get to this analysis and to get to this decision. And go and pick some properties and make the comparables. It might be that you don't pick London, you might pick Kent, you might pick Reading, you might pick Watford. You know, it doesn't have to be in London, and you go, okay, it's cheaper there, but then Nottingham, Northampton, how far away do you get before the actual cash flow starts to deteriorate? And then have a look on Land Registry at the capital growth over those periods of times. And that gives you an average, but it's a good indicator of where it's likely to go and how it's been performing in the past. But what I believe that's definitely happening is that the north-south divide is closing. Property prices have really gone up in the north, and property prices in the south have kind of stagnated over the last 10 years. So the gap between the two is now getting closer than it ever has been before. But there's one problem. What do you do if this is your first investment property? What are the steps to enable you to buy that property, ensuring that it's the minimum amount of risk and the minimum amount of aggravation that you're going to be exposed to? So that's why next you want to go and look at this video that I've put together about how to buy your first buy-to-let property in the UK with the least amount of risk and the least amount of aggravation to make the most amount of money in the quickest amount of time. So thanks very much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.